the polls now reflect it is a very close race between me, the Republican candidate, Cuomo, and Zoran Mamdani. Eric Adams doesn't even surface in the polls, and he's the sitting mayor. But people have such a high negative feeling about him that he just can't get beyond a certain number.
Okay, it's a tight race for New York City mayor as Democratic nominee Zoran Mamdani leads the campaign trail for a family trip to Uganda. For more, let's bring in today's political panel, co-founder of South End Hill Strategies, Colin Reed, and ARC Initiatives partner, Joné Wartell. Colin, I got to go to you first, given what Curtis Lee was saying. You look at the way this race is structured right now. Does the Republican have to get out of the race and another independent to stop Mamdani from being mayor?
Well, Democrats outnumber Republicans 6-1 in New York, so this is going to be a Democratic problem to sort out, and let's hope they do. I don't think anyone wants America's symbol of capitalism to fall in the hands of a Democratic socialist, someone who's talked about the need to privatize all sorts of property, the need to raise taxes through the roof. This can't happen, and I worry about it because for a number of reasons, but one, Andrew Cuomo is irredeemable in the eyes of voters. And that's the real problem here. And he continues to stay in this race when people aren't just going to take a flyer on him. So give Mr. Mamdani credit. He's talking about what voters care about. His solutions may be ridiculous, but at least he's identified the issues that are on people's minds.
What do you think, Joné? I mean, you've Cuomo staying in. I think he's polling second now. I mean, how does this race shake out, do you think?
I think what's interesting is the story of how Democrats and how the Democratic base is responding to both of these candidates. As it's been mentioned, I think Mamdani really does represent this chorus of voices who are saying business as usual, politics as usual, no more of that, right? And so while I think we understand that Cuomo will remain in this race, he's an establishment candidate, he's someone that folks are still going to rally around, I think it's important to understand the discussion that these two candidates are having and how it represents politics as usual versus moving forward and really turning the page on the Democratic messaging.
And Colin, there's a not zero number of Republicans who don't live in New York who probably would like to see him elected mayor, right?
Well, look, New York was governed by Republicans for a long time. People forget. Mayor Giuliani, Mayor Bloomberg started as a Republican. It started going downhill when they elected Bill de Blasio and hasn't really come back since. Nobody, left, right, and center, wants America's largest city to fall into the hands of someone who's, what he's saying he's going to do would be complete chaos. You cannot just tax people and back into the Stone Age and expect the city to come back. People will leave, jobs will leave, the city will go in the wrong direction. Nobody wants that. But I think it speaks to a bigger issue is Mr. Mamdani is speaking about what people care about. That's something the National Democratic Party, we're still in this doom loop from July of 2024 where they haven't talked about the issues on people's minds, and the Democrats should take a lesson from it, and that's what President Trump did last year. He talked about what people cared about and people voted for him. Politics isn't always rocket science.
Joné, don't worry about it because the Democratic Party is doing an autopsy. But the problem with that autopsy, according to the New York Times, is that it is described as avoiding the likeliest cause of death. They'll mostly avoid whether President Biden should have run, whether he should have exited earlier, or whether VP Harris was the right choice to replace him. So, what are we doing here, right?
Well, look, I've worked on the last 6 presidential elections, and one thing I can tell you is that elections aren't won or lost on a single issue, but a series of decisions and considerations. I think it's easy in this moment to look at the past and relitigate what happened with the Biden to Harris transition and some of those other considerations and how that changed the dynamics of the race. But I think that Democrats are trying to look forward in this moment. There's a lot happening in Congress. There's a lot happening in this administration. And so it does not benefit us to continue going through the relitigation of all of these decisions from last year, but rather meeting the moment, right? Meeting the moment of what's happening in the Trump administration, what's happening in Congress, these damaging policies that are taking the social safety net, health care, and services away from everyday Americans. And so I think what Democrats really need to focus on is how do they meet this moment right now with what's happening in Congress and what's happening with the White House, and not looking back to say, would this decision or that decision have changed the outcome of 2024? That's not really going to be productive moving forward.
Yeah, what about that, Colin? Think back to 2012. Republicans did themselves an autopsy. Donald Trump came in, did the exact opposite of what the autopsy said, and now he's won 2 presidential elections.
That's right. And this autopsy, by the way, Tomorrow marks the 1-year mark of President Biden getting out of this race, and yet we're still talking about it because the Democrats have been unable to put it in the rearview mirror, and it's just become this unending doom loop of political narratives. Selena Zito's book about Butler is a #1 New York Times bestseller, so this is not just about Republicans. This is the American people feel like they were hoodwinked. They feel like there was a bait and switch. For 4 years, they were told this guy was totally with it. He wasn't. Then they were told they're going to put in Kamala Harris. She's going to be exposed to absolutely zero primaries, and they were supposed to vote for her because she was Democrat. It just wasn't something they could sell.
Joneigh, if you had an autopsy, what would your summary paragraph be?
Well, I'll note that while we're marking the year mark of President Biden getting out of the race, we are also marking the 6-month marker of the Trump administration and what's been a series of disastrous policies. What I think is important to say is, listen, Democrats in 2024 had some trouble mobilizing key voters who would have won this election, who would have been decisive in key states. Let's move forward. Let's look forward to the current moment, and let's put 2024 to bed.
All right, Joneigh Wartell, Colin Reed, thanks for joining us.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.